Hey there guys, Nordic Warrior here. Hope you guys all had a good Christmas. I know I certainly did. So yeah, since I've had this week off work and I've basically been sitting around scratching my balls doing nothing, I figured I would go ahead and make a video because I had the urge to do something. I'm bored out of my mind. So yeah, let's talk about the card that took place just before Christmas, the Day of Reckoning card, with Anthony Joshua and Otto Wallin topping the bill. So, as those of you who saw my sort of pre-fight video will know, and those of you who followed my live streams, you'll know that I wasn't really that intrigued by the card. There wasn't really anything on it that I thought was that interesting. I didn't watch it live. I checked it out afterwards. And yeah, it just didn't really appeal to me for several reasons. But to the average casual boxing fan, they were really excited about it, probably because you had several heavyweight matchups on the card. And I want to talk about it. So I'm not going to talk too much about the undercard because the undercard was relatively inconsequential. I mean, you had Filip Hrgovic basically fighting a professional jobber, a guy with no punching technique whatsoever, no guard, no defense, no chin, a guy with a winning record, but you really wonder as to the as to the validity of that record, and you wonder, how did this guy get so many wins in a professional boxing ring when the guy doesn't even know how to throw a punch or seemingly how to defend himself? Just a guy with a padded record, who was built up and basically sold off to these named fighters. It was a complete and utter mismatch, and it was completely inconsequential. Nothing else to say about it. Likewise, you had Alex Zorro, who is some random British level contender who I've never heard of, who somehow got a shot at Jayo Pitaya, and it was the same situation. Jayo Pitaya completely demolished him in one round, complete and utter mismatch, complete waste of time, really not much more to say about it. You had Dmitry Bivol defending his title against another unproven British level fighter in Lyndon Arthur, another horrendous mismatch. And not only was that one a horrendous mismatch, but at least the other two that I mentioned previously, they had the decency to be short. But this one, not only was it a horrendous mismatch, but it was a 12-round snooze fest with Dmitry Bivol just toying with the guy, carrying him, making no attempt to stop the fight, making no attempt to make the fight exciting. And it was just a fight that, like most of Dmitry Bivol's fights, will be forgotten about in no time. A few people in the comment section of my videos got very, very offended and very, very butthurt at me simply stating my opinion that I don't find Dmitry Bivol entertaining or exciting as a fighter. You would have thought that I was insulting their family or threatening them or something like that with the way that people came at me. But look, I'm not here to validate your autistic obsession with your favourite fighter, okay? That's not why I'm here. I'm here to state my personal opinion, right? And as a boxing fan, as a consumer, okay, if you want me to be invested in your career as a fighter, you have to have something to offer me. And I just don't find Dmitry Bivol exciting, okay? He's a good fighter. I've never said he's not a good fighter. He's a very, very technically proficient fighter. He has good defense. He has good skills. Okay, he's a good athlete. He's a good all-rounder, okay? And he's conclusively beaten everybody he's fought so far. But his level of competition hasn't been that great. Okay, he's in a division where the top guys basically all fought each other. Of course, I'm talking about the top guys from his era, Beterbiev and Vosdik and guys like that. They were fighting each other. He, to my knowledge, made no attempt to fight any of those guys and was happy fighting on undercards of heavyweight bum fights, defending his title against easy opposition. So, yeah, I don't really understand this appeal for Dmitry Bivol, and I don't understand why people are getting upset and offended at me simply stating my opinions on him. I mean, the guy fights like once a year, and it's usually a 12-round boring sparring session against a guy who's leagues below him, who, my personal opinion, doesn't even look like they're trying to win. So, yeah, I'm tired of talking about Dmitry Bivol. I've got nothing else to say about the guy. Wake me up when he does something of consequence. I digress. So, what else happened on the card? So you had Arslanbek Makhmudov being upset by Ajit Kabayel, and that was one that surprised a lot of people. Me personally, it didn't surprise me. I never rated Arslanbek Makhmudov. Those of you who've been following my channel will know that. I always kind of saw him as a bit of a glass cannon, and a guy who was a devastating knockout defeat waiting to happen. That's kind of how I've always seen Arslanbek Makhmudov, as long as I've been looking at him. And you know, Arslanbek Makhmudov, to me, he is a prime example of what happens to a fighter when you don't develop them. Right? If you take a fighter and have them turn pro, and you don't give them the right developmental fights, that's what happens. You know, if you look at Arslanbek Makhmudov, now he's been pro for how many years now? I don't know exactly, but he's been a pro for a long time, and he's in his mid-30s now. And if you look at his career, he's done nothing but fight jobbers. Like, his whole career has basically been, they bring guys in who are completely overmatched, guys who are no match for him whatsoever, who are significantly smaller, who can't punch, who have no chin, who are basically there to lay down in the first round. Now, that's great for building up a fighter's reputation and essentially building him up as a knockout artist and a destroyer and getting casual fans excited. It's great for that, but it's not good for developing the fighter. Because what's going to happen, you build a guy up that way, you know, just fighting nothing but first round jobbers. What's essentially going to happen is the first time you put him in the ring with somebody who's a genuine competitor, somebody who's durable, somebody who can punch, somebody who can take a shot, somebody who's got defense, you know, somebody with a chin, somebody with stamina who can go the distance, somebody who's not going to go in there and just capitulate in the first round. But no, they're actually going to come to win. They're going to apply educated pressure. They're going to mind their defense. They're going to try and pick holes in your game. And they're going to try and legitimately beat you. Right? If you put him in the ring with someone who's there to beat him, he's going to fall apart because he hasn't developed. He hasn't had to deal with any adversity anywhere in his career up until this point. So you saw that from Arslanbek Makhmudov. You saw him go in there expecting this to be like all his fights. He's now fighting a solid, experienced, European-level fighter, a guy who's proven at that level, okay, with victories over the likes of Derek Chisora. I know that was a long time ago, but it was a good victory at the time. And he did kind of go into obscurity after that, and he didn't really get any marquee wins. But he was definitely a durable guy, definitely an experienced guy, a guy who's been 12 rounds before. And he was a guy who was just the perfect type of opponent to expose Makhmudov, a guy who hadn't had those same experiences, who hadn't fought at that level yet. So, yeah, I wasn't really surprised by this result at all. I mean, Makhmudov, I always thought he was a hype job. I always thought he wasn't being developed. And I always thought he would be a guy who would be disappointing when he steps up in class. And that was what happened. So, yeah, don't really have anything else to say about it. It was a complete exposure. And if Makhmudov wants to go anywhere in the heavyweight division, he's going to now have to go back to the drawing board and actually develop. All right, no more first-round knockout wins against guys who aren't there to win. No, he has to actually fight durable, experienced contenders, or even just tough, durable journeymen, guys who can take him round so that he can get the experience necessary to deal with a European-level opponent. Okay, there's levels to boxing, and if you're developing as a fighter, unless you were like an elite level amateur, like say a Lomachenko or an Usyk, unless you're like one of them guys, you need to develop in boxing, right? You need to fight a steady increase in competition in order to build up your stamina and your confidence and your experience. So, yeah, very disappointing from Arslanbek Makhmudov, but didn't really surprise me. It is what it is. You had, of course, Jarrell Miller versus Daniel Dubois. This was the fight that most people seem to be excited about on the card, and yeah, I always thought it was going to be an entertaining fight, but I felt it was pretty obvious how the fight was going to go and who was going to win. And yeah, it went exactly as I expected. Daniel Dubois completely controlled the fight. A lot of people are saying that Jarrell Miller didn't seem like he was trying, that he didn't throw a lot of punches, and that he didn't really apply as much pressure as they were expecting. But yeah, there's a reason for that. The reason for that is that Jarrell Miller has never, and I talked about this before the fight, he has never in his entire career fought a puncher before. He's never fought anybody with power. You know, he's never fought anybody with power. If you look at Jarrell Miller's career, most of his most noteworthy wins were either against guys who were half his size, you know, people like Thomas Adamek, small guys, cruiserweights, or he was fighting guys who were completely shot and in their 40s and basically ready to be taken out. People like Marius Vac and Johan Dubois, guys who were just completely shot-born by the time they fought him. So Jarrell Miller had never fought anybody of consequence. He'd never fought anybody of note. He was just a big guy who had shown throughout his career that he had no defense. The guy was an absolute punching bag. And he got used to being able to take shots against guys who were significantly smaller, significantly older, significantly lighter than he was, and just walking these guys down by being so strong. And let's not forget, so chemically enhanced. I mean, the guy was juiced up to the gills. So that was why Jarrell Miller was so effective at that level. But you put Jarrell Miller in the ring with a puncher, and that all goes out the window, because in order for him to gain any ground in the ring whatsoever, he has to walk through shots. And you can't walk through shots when you're fighting a guy like Daniel Dubois, a guy who has one-punch knockout power. Now, I've never seen Daniel Dubois as like an elite heavyweight or anything like that. But one thing you cannot deny is that the guy can punch. Okay, the guy's got a lot of power. So when you take a puncher and put him in the ring against a guy who has no defense whatsoever, is literally a punching bag, is morbidly obese, right? It looks like he doesn't even train, and relies entirely on his size, strength, chin, work rate, and physicality. How on earth was he going to win the fight? Like, there was no... To me, this was as obvious a pick as any I've made this year. So yeah, this was a clear, easy, straightforward fight. But it was entertaining because, again, Jarrell Miller's style and Daniel Dubois being a puncher, it just makes for an entertaining watch, doesn't it? So yeah, Dubois absolutely battered him. He was in full control the entire fight, and he got the stoppage. And yeah, I really wasn't surprised by it at all. But a lot of people are blowing it out of proportion. I know people are saying, oh, Daniel Dubois, you got a career-best victory, and yeah, he's back into title contention now. No, he isn't. Okay, Daniel Dubois still has major flaws, and most of those flaws are mental, as far as I'm concerned. He has no heart whatsoever. He proved that against Joe Joyce, he proved that against Kevin Lerena, and he proved it against Usyk, where he quit after taking a jab. You know, he's also a very dirty fighter. I mean, he was low-blowing even against Miller, and that was what he was banking on to get him the win against Usyk. And yeah, he failed in that regard. So yeah, I'm not really too convinced by Daniel Dubois. I never rated Jarrell Miller. Beating Jarrell Miller doesn't prove anything as far as I'm concerned, because as far as I'm concerned, any borderline world-class heavyweight would have done the same thing to Jarrell Miller. I mean, I would have picked Ajit Kabayel to do the same thing to Jarrell Miller. I would even probably favour Makhmudov over Jarrell Miller. I'm not even kidding, because at least those guys have power. And if Jarrell Miller had fought either of them, he would have been walking into punches from the first round. And those guys being big, those guys being powerful, they would have put enough of a beating on Jarrell Miller to where he would be discouraged from actually letting his hands go and throwing punches in the later rounds. So yeah, here's what it is. Daniel Dubois won by a pretty easy stoppage. And I actually think he could have gotten him out sooner if he'd have let his hands go. It's just that Daniel Dubois is a relatively cautious fighter these days, given, you know, the beatings that he's taken. I think he's learnt to be a little bit more conservative with his punches. So here's what it is. We'll see where Daniel Dubois goes from here. I wouldn't mind seeing him fight some of the other heavyweights on the card. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing him fight Kabayel or Hrgovic or one of these guys. I don't think those fights will happen because, you know, those guys all have their own path that they're kind of on. You know, Hrgovic seems like he's going to await that IBF situation and try and get a shot at the vacant title. And I'm assuming Ajit Kabayel is probably going to do the same for one of the other belts. So we'll see what happens. But I wouldn't mind seeing that. Daniel Dubois, in my opinion, if he wants to develop as a fighter, he needs to do exactly what I was suggesting for Makhmudov. He needs to fight more durable guys who can take him rounds, guys who can apply pressure, and maybe fight somebody who's a bit more defensively astute than Jarrell Miller. Somebody who can move their head and bob and weave, and maybe fight Derek Chisora. He's still about. I know he's completely shot to pieces, but if he's got anything left whatsoever, if he's anything like he was a few years back, he could maybe apply some pressure and show us what Daniel Dubois is made of at this stage. I wouldn't mind seeing that fight. It'd be an easy fight to make. I know there was talks of that fight before. Let's see that fight. Let's see Daniel Dubois versus Derek Chisora. Why not? So now on to the main events. You had Deontay Wilder fighting Joseph Parker. Now, going into the fight, I just suspected it would be the same as all Wilder's fights. I suspected Joseph Parker would square up, get out of his boxing stance, put his hands down, and willingly give Wilder a shot to land that right hand. And then he would go down like a sack of spuds and pretend to be knocked out, essentially, because that's what happens in Wilder fights. But no, to my surprise, what happened was Joseph Parker went in there and actually came to win, which is something you don't often see in Deontay Wilder fights. And what you could see from the very first round of the fight, it was very, very evident. Joseph Parker had his hands up. He was in a boxing stance. He immediately, from the opening seconds of the fight, he came forward, held the center of the ring, cut the ring off. Right? He actually had proper footwork, proper positioning, and he began to throw his jab. And Deontay Wilder, this guy, this biggest punching heavyweight of all time, this master tactician, this guy who is just perfect at positioning you and maneuvering you into a position to land that big, massive, devastating, unstoppable straight right hand to where he doesn't even really need to land it. He can just skim the tip of your nose with the pinky part of his finger on the far right side of his glove. And that's enough to knock you out cold. That's how amazing this guy is. What does he do in the first round? No, he's running around the ring, wasting energy, in pure survival mode. Because Deontay Wilder's not used to that. Like I said, he's used to you squaring up out of a boxing stance with no guard and giving him a free shot to land the right hand in round one. That's what he's used to you doing. So the fact that Joseph Parker just used some basic boxing fundamentals and did the things that they teach you the first time you ever go into a boxing gym. Get into your boxing stance, hold the center of the ring, have your hands up, okay? Come in at a side angle so you present a smaller target, and bend at your knees when you come close so you can get underneath punches. These are some of the first things you're taught in any amateur boxing gym. And Joseph Parker was doing them. And you saw in that very first round, Deontay Wilder had no clue what to do, because Deontay Wilder is the biggest, most embarrassing, most hilarious fraud in the history of heavyweight boxing. A guy who has zero ring IQ, no intelligence whatsoever, and no punching technique whatsoever. What you saw in the fight was Deontay Wilder really didn't have any setup punches, right? One thing I've been talking about for a long time in regards to Deontay Wilder is when you look at this guy. Now, this guy's been a boxer for a long time, okay? He's been boxing for, 17 years? Maybe even longer. He was an Olympian. He actually won a medal in the Olympics somehow. And he's a professional boxer who's had 45 professional fights, and he's been a world champion and everything, and he's had multiple defenses. But despite this, despite all his long veteran years in boxing, he doesn't even know how to throw a punch. He doesn't know how to throw a jab. He doesn't know how to throw a hook. He doesn't know how to throw an uppercut. He doesn't know how to throw an overhand shot. He doesn't know how to bend his knees to get low and avoid a punch. I've never one time in my entire life seen him use a high guard. I've never one time in my life seen him use a Philly shell or any sort of sophisticated defense. You see nothing with Deontay Wilder. The guy is a big, skinny, lanky, just wide open target. He's so open to get hit. He's utterly clueless. He has the balance of like a baby giraffe on ice. When he tries to throw a punch, he carries his whole body with the punch. He doesn't know how to actually step into a punch. Like, he is so bad. He is so embarrassing. It's utterly hilarious, man. And to see Joseph Parker, like, Joseph Parker's not really that good a fighter. He's a relatively poor contender as far as I'm concerned. But he's a guy who, to all his faults, for all his faults, he does have some boxing fundamentals. He's a guy who can use a high guard. He can jab. He has good footwork. He can move around the ring graciously. He can cut off your escape when you're trying to move. And that's what you'll see in this fight. You'll see Deontay Wilder. He's showing a lot of excessive movement. He's constantly moving in circles around the ring, just trying to stay out of range. He's always got his back to the ropes. He's always wasting energy. And Joseph Parker, it was just easy for him. He didn't break a sweat the entire fight. And there was never any moment in the fight where Parker looked in trouble, where he looked hurt, nothing. Even when Wilder was able to land a shot, it didn't have any effect whatsoever because Wilder doesn't really have any power whatsoever. I mean, the guy weighs like 213 pounds. He has legs that are like toothpicks. He's got that big that big long, like, gangly physique where you can see that the guy is like ripped to the bone like a basketball player, but he doesn't really have any physical strength. Wilder's not really that dangerous from long range because, like I said, he doesn't have a jab, so he can't set up any of his punches. He's not that dangerous from mid-range because he doesn't know how to throw hooks. When he tries to throw a hook, he just swings his whole body off balance, and he's right there to be countered and brutally knocked out. And when he tries to throw an uppercut, it's like if you've ever seen someone try to throw an uppercut in sparring, but they've never really been taught how, so they don't bend their knees and come up with the power, because the idea of throwing an uppercut is you bend your knees and it comes from your core. That's why you do like circuit training and stuff like that and running upstairs, because things like that develop your core strength and it allows you to throw punches inside like hooks and uppercuts. And that's how you get power on an uppercut. You bend your knees. Wilder's just throwing the uppercut, just swinging it without any leverage on it whatsoever. So Joseph Parker gets hit with an uppercut and he just smiles, he just laughs. He's like, there's nothing on that. It's so funny, man. Like, Deontay Wilder is such a fraud that I'm actually sick of talking about it. I'm sick of highlighting it. I'm sick of seeing these comments and hearing, oh, Deontay Wilder is this master tactician who, he's able to get in the head of his opponent and he looks awkward and he looks like he doesn't know what he's doing, but he's playing 4D chess and he's trying to set up the opening for that right hand. Despite the fact he doesn't know how to throw a jab, he doesn't know how to throw a hook, he doesn't know how to throw an uppercut, and he can't create an opening for a straight right hand. And when he does throw the straight right hand, and you saw that in this fight, he puts all his body weight behind it, which you're not supposed to do. You're supposed to snap the punch, because that's how you get power. You don't lean into it and leave yourself wide open to get countered. But that's what Deontay Wilder was doing in this fight. And it was an easy fight for Joseph Parker. And I agree with what a lot of people are saying about it. Joseph Parker had ample opportunity in this fight to get a knockout and to take Deontay Wilder out. There was even a moment in the fight where Joseph Parker landed 3 overhand rights in a row and like 2 left hooks. And Wilder was in the corner completely out of it, completely defenseless, hands down, leaning over the ropes, right there to be taken out. And Joseph Parker being Joseph Parker, this is just one of the major criticisms that many of us over the years have had about Joseph Parker, is that the guy just isn't a finisher. He doesn't have that finishing instinct where he's going to go in there and take you out. Like, Joseph Parker's, he just looks to me like a guy who doesn't really like fighting, and he doesn't really like going in there and putting a beating on his opponent. He kind of wants to win, but do the bare minimum to win. And that was the vibe I got from Joseph Parker, which tells me that this was probably the only real fight that Deontay Wilder has had since the second Tyson Fury fight. You know, it was the only fight since then where the opponent didn't get out of their boxing stance, drop their hands, and allow Deontay Wilder to land punches. And even if you look at the Tyson Fury trilogy, because let's be honest, the Tyson Fury trilogy is Wilder's claim to fame, really. No one really talks about Wilder's title resume anymore because it really is inconsequential. It was a complete joke. He fought nothing but jobbers, right? But if you look at his Tyson Fury trilogy, the first fight, Tyson Fury didn't really train, did he, for the fight? He was really, he was really there coming off of rehab and fat camp, basically. So he didn't really train for the fight. He wasn't fit for the fight. He wasn't technically prepared for it. And he spent a lot of that fight spoiling and running and fouling. But when he did actually decide to fight, he was doing things you shouldn't do. Like I was saying, he was getting out of his boxing stance, dropping his hands, and just giving Wilder free punches. Literally just standing right in front of Wilder with his hands down, allowing him to land shots. And that was why Fury got dropped in the first fight. In the second fight, he didn't do that, did he? In the second fight, he actually trained. He actually showed up in shape. He actually had a proper training camp for the fight. And he actually showed up to win the fight without messing about, essentially. He didn't give Wilder anything in that second fight. And you saw what Deontay Wilder was made of. You saw he had no defense, no chin, no stamina. He's actually got very poor stamina, Wilder. And that's why he barely throws any punches, really. He was completely off balance throughout the whole fight. He was very weak to the body. You'll notice when Fury hit Wilder to the body, he just couldn't take the power to the body. It completely capitulated after that. And he was completely useless. He didn't win a second of that second fight. Then in the third fight, again, Fury didn't train. He showed up fat as a pig. He basically had, he did no preparation for that fight whatsoever. He literally fought Wilder that third time without even a training camp. And again, he was just, he fought like he was disinterested a lot of the time. He gave him free shots. He was taking whole rounds off, having whole rounds where he barely threw a punch. And it was like he was just there to be paid. And still, he completely dominated most of the fight and brutally knocked Wilder out. So, yeah, you look at Deontay Wilder, man, he's complete crap. I don't ever want to hear anybody tell me that he's this master tactician, that I just don't understand the deep complexities and the 4D chess that Deontay Wilder plays in the ring, because he's really a genius and this, that, and the other. I don't want to hear it. Deontay Wilder is a fraud. He's a bum. His entire career was just one big manufactured joke where his opponents were laying down. Chris Arreola quit on his stool for no reason. Artur Spilka gave him a boxing lesson before conveniently just squaring up to him and letting him land the right hand and going down like a sack of spuds. Robert Helenius just walked right in front of him with his hands down, got touched on literally got tapped on the nose with a right hand, skimmed the tip of his nose, and that was enough for him to fly backwards and lie on his back with his eyes wide open like, wow, I've just been knocked out cold. I mean, you could take a baseball bat or a sledgehammer and smack me in the face with it, right? If it just skims the tip of my nose, yeah, it might break my nose, but it's not going to knock me out cold, is it? That's not going to happen. I'm not going to go down with my eyes wide open like I'm dead on the canvas, am I? That's not going to happen. So, look, Deontay Wilder, I'm sick of talking about it. I'm sick of ranting about it. I'll probably leave off on him now because I'm kind of known as the guy who hates on Deontay Wilder. That's kind of the reputation I have. But again, this was a vindication. Joseph Parker went in there and showed that Deontay Wilder doesn't have any boxing fundamentals. He doesn't have any defense. He doesn't have a boxing stance. He doesn't have a guard. He doesn't know how to throw a punch. And he has no power. Okay, that's the thing a lot of people can't get their head around. They still think that Deontay Wilder is this devastating puncher. He's not. Deontay Wilder doesn't know how to punch. His power is completely overrated and completely fake, okay? those knockouts were not real knockouts. Okay, all you have to do to sum up Deontay Wilder's entire career, the fight that defined his entire career, is look at the Malik Scott fight, right? The Malik Scott fight defined everything you need to know about Deontay Wilder's entire career. So, I'm done with Deontay Wilder. Please just retire, Deontay, okay? Just retire. Your career's over. You've been exposed. Even the casuals are starting to realise what happened with Wilder. I've seen a lot of people suggesting that the guy was just a manufactured hype job, a complete fraud. People are starting to wake up to it now, okay? This narrative of him being this, this mad genius who... Just enough of that. Like, leave it out, guys. I've had enough of it, okay? No more Deontay Wilder. He's been exposed. Time to retire. As for Anthony Joshua, now this is the main event of the card. Anthony Joshua versus Otto Wallin. Joshua's performance and what he was able to do didn't really surprise me. But what did surprise me, there's one thing that really surprised me, was Otto Wallin. And that was the fact that Otto Wallin just quit on his stool. Because I got to be honest, I wasn't expecting that. Anybody that spoke to me before this fight will know. I thought what was going to happen was AJ would dominate the fight. Like, he would comprehensively outbox, outpoint, and basically school Otto Wallin. And that it would be a relatively easy and comfortable win for AJ. Where he would basically gain a lead early on. And essentially Otto Wallin would go into his shell and would kind of coast and try to make it the distance and try to spoil his way through the fight, because that was kind of what Otto Wallin did when he fought Tyson Fury. He did well early on. He landed some shots and he cut him, but as the fight went on, he kind of lost heart and he kind of just spoiled his way through it. At least that's what it looked like to me. He didn't really show a lot of ambition to try to go out there and win the fight. And that was kind of what I thought would happen in this fight. I thought that AJ would control the fight, he would win easily, but Wallin would be durable enough and negative enough to be able to make it to the later rounds or go the distance. That wasn't what happened. Otto Wallin quit on his stool after round 5 and barely did anything the entire fight. And if you look at the fight closely, I really don't know what Otto Wallin was thinking. I mean, he was throwing punches from out of range. He was like bouncing around in the ring. His footwork looked atrocious. He was crossing his feet. He was standing right in the pocket with AJ, throwing a backhand that was never going to land. It was completely out of range. And he would get countered. And, he made AJ look a lot better than he actually is. Because if you look at Anthony Joshua when he fought Usyk, for example, AJ's a guy who's got good boxing fundamentals. He's the opposite of Wilder. He's a guy who actually can punch. He is actually physically durable in terms of like strength and just his up close presence. If you try to fight inside against AJ, it's not always a good idea because he's very strong and he can bend at the knees and he can deliver an uppercut to your chin. He can work the body. He can throw hooks inside. He is a dangerous fighter. But the problem with AJ is he's not very good at mid-range. Usyk was able to get foot position on him easily, and he was able to make AJ look very clumsy and very one-dimensional. And Otto Wallin wasn't really able to do that. And I don't know whether it's because Otto Wallin is just complete garbage, or if AJ is a little bit better than I thought, or if AJ has improved since that Usyk fight. And it's very possible that with the fight against Helenius and the fight against Jermaine Franklin going a few rounds and taking AJ into deep waters here and there, it's very possible that he's learnt a thing or two from them fights and that he's improved and that he's a lot more effective, aggressive than he was in the past. That's definitely possible, but to be perfectly honest, I don't really think there's a lot we can take from this fight because Otto Wallin just wasn't really there to win, in my opinion. He kind of knew his role. He was throwing punches completely out of range. He was throwing punches off balance. He was crossing his feet. He was bouncing around. He was just fighting like an amateur in there. And he didn't look to me like he had any self-confidence, self-belief. and he appeared to just quit on his stool. So yeah, disappointing from Wallin. He really didn't provide any resistance to AJ at all, and it doesn't really tell us anything about AJ and his level. So yeah, I don't really have much to say about it, really. It was a disappointing main event, but it was a confidence builder for Anthony Joshua. And I would like to see Anthony Joshua take on Hrgovic or someone like that. I'd like to see him take on one of these other heavyweight contenders, but sadly that's probably not going to happen because, you know, these guys are waiting for a title shot. You know, they're waiting for Usyk and Fury to fight because whoever wins that fight is probably going to retire and vacate the titles. So these guys are going to kind of swoop in like vultures and try to pick up a title. But hopefully in the meantime we do get some of these fights and we get to see the likes of Joseph Parker, Anthony Joshua and Hrgovic and Kabayel and Makhmudov and Dubois and Miller and guys like that. Let's see all these guys fight each other. Let's not see them all go their own ways now and just go back to fighting bums in their hometowns. Let's see these guys actually fight each other. I mean, I'm not too fond of the idea of seeing Joseph Parker fight AJ again. I think that's kind of pointless because that first fight was really boring between the two of them, and my opinion, they just didn't really try to hurt each other. It was more or less a sparring session, and it was kind of like that with the Parker-Wilder fight. You know, Parker just kind of let Wilder off the hook here and there and never went for the finish. Like, I honestly think he could have taken Wilder out inside of 5 rounds if he wanted to, but it's just Joseph Parker. He's not that kind of fighter. He's not a finisher. You know, he's more of a technician. He's kind of like Dmitry Bivol that way. A guy who's kind of boring, sadly. So, yeah, I don't know. That's pretty much my thoughts on it. I know this was kind of a rambling video. I just did this off the top of my head. I just had some spare time. I've been doing nothing. So, yeah, I felt like talking about the card. So, there's one more thing I want to bring up. Naoya Inoue was able to become undisputed champion against Marlon Tapales. And from what I hear, Tapales actually put up a pretty decent fight and gave Inoue some problems and frustrated him a bit. I haven't watched it yet, but I mean to, so I'm looking forward to seeing that fight. And I might talk about it in a live stream or something. So, yeah, good performance from Inoue. And I kind of suspected that Tapales would be a tougher fight than Stephen Fulton. I always kind of thought that. So, yeah, it was good to hear that Inoue was able to do that. And then I look forward to seeing what he can do in the future. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. I know this has been a long video. Thanks for stopping by if you made it this far. Thanks for watching and God bless.